Alright, disclaimer, obvious sexism, racism, homophobia eventually in the book, and right now ageism in the graying economy. Um, by the way, chapter 6 is just a whole reference point to something that I'm writing at the moment. As you know, guys, I haven't brought it up, but I'm still writing it in the background with all the research I'm doing. But yeah, remember, chapter 6. Um, anyways, where was I? But yes, it doesn't cost the public treasury nearly. It doesn't cost the public treasury nearly as much to support a child as it does to support an elderly person. Yes, but when fertility ultimately increases, as it must, lest the Western world just fade away, the dependency ratio will be getting lower on both sides. More elderly and more children, all paid for by pathetically few workers. Yes, people are living longer. Yes, people can retire later. The Social Security Amendment of 1983 increased retirement age to 67, starting in the year 2022. Yes, life expectancy is going up and will likely continue going to, but an older force of retired people will require more medical care and more expensive medical care, far more years. Where will the extra money come from? Not from new, bigger taxes on the slender legions of the birth cohorts. There won't be enough of them to pay what is needed for the elderly to take advantage of the new life health extending medical technology. Well, it is said by more conservative libertarian types that Social Security should be reconstructed as a fully funded private system. Then the elderly won't be dependent on vanishing government trust funds, such as for Medicare, for their health needs. Every elderly person would have his or her own individual retirement account, IRA, or individual medical account, IMA, fully funded and invested in securities. Then it won't matter if there are skinnier generations behind them. True? Partly. Although the plan has the effect of increasing general revenue taxes for many decades by switching to a fully funded system rather than a pay-as-you-go system, may be less help than is thought. But the birth thirst has potent economic effects because it changes the essence of the population. Consider, suppose, there were 10 old people, 10 children, and 80 workers in a population. Then the old people, with medical IRAs or plain old rainy day personal savings for that matter, would would indeed be able to buy the best medical care. Doctors, hospitals, exotic machinery. There would be plenty of doctors, nurses, and medical technicians around to buy such services from. But to make the case simple, suppose the population had 80 old people, 10 children, and 10 workers. The 80 old people, even if they were healthy, would soon find their wealth diluted by a great medical demand chasing limited medical supply. Among those 10 workers would be only a few doctors, nurses, and medical technicians who knew how to use the new miracle medical technology of the 21st century. And so, the 80 rich old people would bid for their services, and prices for medical services would skyrocket, and rich old people wouldn't be rich anymore, or they would be sick, rich old people who couldn't afford medical care. I exaggerate the numbers, but that is the effect of drastic swings in dependency ratios. A human society functions smoothly as a pyramid where many workers support few elderly. Square that pyramid, and the sound of the crunch reverberates everywhere, mostly negatively. Finally, it's said don't worry about Social Security and Medicare shortfalls caused by the birth dearth. The rising tide of technology yielding per capita productivity increases will bail us out. We'll all be richer, will we? There is yet more to the economic problem. It's not just about age distribution, lack of markets, and dependency ratios. Another factor is tightly intertwined. Spirit. Cringe. Unprovable as it may be, I believe we must face the idea that societies that keep getting older and smaller, older and smaller, older and smaller, he says that 3 times, by the way, will become dispirited. It was not an even older and ever smaller population that yielded dynamism that has become associated with American life. Quote, manifest destiny was not the cry of a non-growth continent of old people. Our most recent spasm of dynamism is surely associated in part with the maturing of the 80 million baby boom babies, young, energetic, creative, and on the make. We have never been a society of old people in old houses fondling old ideas. Man, it's kind of cringe that he brings up manifest destiny, since that was just used to, like, colonize the natives and, pretty much genocide. So that's really fucked up. I mean, he might not have meant it in that way, but it's just like your destiny to do all this to everyone in favor of your society prospering. That's messed up. Consider the ramifications of some effects of the birth that are in the intangible realm of the spirit, but are not unimportant to an economy. I was sitting with economist Julian Simon in a cafeteria in San Francisco where we were both attending a 1986 meeting of the Population Association of America. We were discussing the birth situation. We talked for a while, and soon our conversation seemed to draw the strands of the economic argument together. Smaller populations, older populations, and less spirit. Simon looked over to the server counter and pointed to the large coffee-making machine. Quote, use San Francisco as a micro-model, he said, and suppose there are 100 coffee-making machines in San Francisco, and suppose about 5 wear out and need replacement each year, and suppose you were a coffee-making machine manufacturer. I so supposed, quote, would you work very hard at designing a brand new super-duper coffee-making machine? I might, I said, if I had an idea so exceptional that I could replace many existing coffee-making machines, but, in general, it didn't seem like a good idea to spend the time, effort, and money if all I could do was sell 5 new machines. I'd just sit by and do things the old way. I suppose, Simon continued, quote, you know that many new people were coming into the neighborhood, and 15 new restaurants would open up this year in San Francisco, and they would all need coffee machines. Oh, that, I agreed, might begin to titillate my commercial senses. 20 machines is an extra 300% bigger potential market than 5 machines. I might set my engineer to work on designing a brilliant new coffee-making machine. Now, although Julian Simon is a provocative and original thinker, this is not an original thought of his. He is talking about the combination of what we often call economies of scale, and escalator effect. These ideas are as applicable to innovation as they are to goods. We all know, for example, that it is difficult, impractical, and expensive to produce only a very small number of automobiles. It only becomes practical when the number are large enough to take advantage of mass production, an economy of scale. And such is often the case with new ideas. It is less likely that the cost of innovation will be worthwhile to the innovator if there is less of a market for his innovation. 20 innovative coffee-making machines, and maybe, yes, 5 innovative coffee-making machines, probably no. As mentioned, the difference in production is 300%, even though the 15 new machines represent only a 15% in total stock of existing coffee-making machines. This is an escalator effect that population growth adds to the production of capital goods. Or consider an even starker example. I imagine a country with 1,000 schoolhouses. If the population of children remains constant or falls, there is no need for any new schoolhouses. But if the population of children goes up, even minimally, say 2%, there will be a need for 20 new schoolhouses. That is an infinite increase in demand for new schoolhouses, from 0 to 20. To say the least, that is of more than passing importance if you are in a schoolhouse building business. So it goes with the capital goods of all kinds. A 2% increase in demand for the disappearing consumer goods product like bread equals 2%, but a 2% increase in demand for non-wear-out capital goods like schoolhouses or just plain houses can require an infinite or massive increase in demand. In this sense, much of the needed innovation, quote, we hear so much about these days respond to demand like a capital good, not a consumer good. If you don't grow, there is less demand for innovation in all those fields where things don't wear out quickly. Damn. So basically, you need programmed obsolescence. Jeez. Economist Ellen Kelly of Duke University puts some of this in a contemporary American setting. Kelly notes that even with an economically slow growth or no growth West, there can still be innovations and inventions. They can come from a university research lab, not dependent on new demand. They could be invented elsewhere in the world, but Kelly points out in a slow-growing economy or a non-growing market, such innovations would be absorbed slowly. After all, if you are a manufacturer, there is less reward to be gained by turning over your stock of machinery if there is less additional demand for what the machinery produces. So your machinery gets older. At the same time, manufacturers in a nation with growing populations and growing markets will bring new machinery online more rapidly. Consequently, their manufacturing techniques will be more modern and efficient than ours. These efficiently produced goods will outcompete our less efficiently, more expensively produced goods. Okay. Even though this sounds obvious, this is just weird that it has to be pointed out this way. Anyways, Kelly believes that this, along with many other factors, has contributed to the decline in our smokestack industry in America's Rust Belt, and that it will continue to have a negative effect. Less innovation ultimately means lower productivity and a lower standard of living than would otherwise be possible. Kelly says this about the harmful economic effects of the birth dearth. Quote, jobs could well be there, but prosperity may not. He believes that we may toward policies of trade protectionism to make up for our inefficiencies for the less efficient industries. This is, he said, will yield higher priced goods for Americans, lowering our standard of living. The slow growing markets talked about here will come about due to diminished population growth, and then get worse due to no population growth, and get even worse if there is an actual population decline. The smaller the potential market likely to use the innovation, the less innovation there will be. Of course, the replacement market is still around and then in itself can be potent for certain sorts of products, but it will never be as good as if there is replacement market plus a growing new market. Economics is said about a life at the margin. Wait, what? Economics, it is said, is about life at the margin. A little more efficiency or a little less efficiency. So too with innovation. The spirit of innovation, the likelihood of innovation would almost surely suffer at least somewhat as population stops growing. And of course, the most importantly, it goes beyond coffee making machines. We can live well without making new coffee machines, but what happens is also applicable, for example, to new medicines to save lives. How much money will a drug company invest in research to produce a new drug for, say, cancer or heart disease, if the potential number of customers in countries with populations that can pay for such a drug shrinks with each passing year? How much? Somewhat less than if the population was growing rather than shrinking. And the population grows somewhat deeper still Recall our potential innovator of the coffee-making machines. Suppose the innovator had a relatively larger market for its potential innovation, not just for 5, as in our San Francisco micro model, but many more throughout the U.S., although still with fewer potential customers than in a condition of vigorous growth. In such a case, the innovator might still take a gamble on new coffee-making machines, or new value, or new printing press, or new computer, or a new valve, or new printing press, or new medical device. If he or she were a young person, a young man or a woman with new idea at age 30 might take the risk. After all, if it works out, he or she would have many years to profit from it. At age 40, the payoff is a little slimmer. At age 50, slimmer still. You will not find many risk-taking entrepreneurs starting afresh at age 60. For quite realistic reasons, the energizing spirit of daring diminishes as a society ages. In considering economics, then, we must consider spirit and culture as well. This relationship can be seen by looking around the world. One culture produces wealth, another prosperity. Another wealth, another poverty. Quite the opposite, I guess. Wow. Spirit and culture drive economics. Even some economists understand this. An innovative, optimistic, forward-looking society will likely be a prosperous one. These are typically the features of youth. The birth circumstance, by definition, yields us an ever-aging society. What kind of spirit is there in a society that doesn't even have the gumption or interest to produce itself?